Welcome to Chicago Microsoft Power Platform User Group for our June 16th meeting, 5:31 p.m. Is that good, Ralph? I am one of your co-organizers. Ralph is the other one. Ralph, you want to say hi? Ralph, we can't hear you.
Sorry, Ralph Rivas over here. I'm with Sujeti, one of the co-organizers of the Chicago Microsoft Power Platform User Group. We have been running this group for a while. Mostly it's a live meetup, and now it's a virtual meetup, and it's just as well because that's pretty much how we have to make it work for going and for however we need to make it go. I'm the national solutions architect for Sujeti, and Power Platform is my specialty. I also wrote the guidance doc on docs.microsoft.com. Welcome.
Righty. Thanks. We still don't have very many people. Do we want to wait another couple minutes? We had about 15 people who were supposed to join, but usually we get about more than that. Well, we don't get more than that, but usually we get a fair percentage of that. So I don't know if it's the weather being nice. I did cancel July's meeting, so we won't have a July one because I figure everybody's doing the summer stuff. Give it just a few seconds. Hopefully some other people join. Otherwise, Ginger, you're going to be talking to very few people, and I apologize for that.
Well, we're going to go on the live internet, so at least we'll be out there as well. So they may not be here now, but they will be later.
Okay. Cool.
Jim, you want to say hi and where you're from?
Can do that. Jim Sutman. I am an analyst with Walgreens in Deerfield.
Jim, you've been here before.
I've been here before. I've been part of this group for about a year and a half now. I've tried about 50% attendance rate. I work in our asset protection department primarily with Power Apps and Power Automate, some Power BI work, and that's pretty much me.
Sweet. Nice. Yeah, I used to, I don't know if we talked about it last time or any other time, but I used to work at ADP when we had a office in Deerfield, which was basically across the street from the Wall Street. Actually, Walgreens now owns the building that ADP used to be in. So it was right off of Lake Cook. Lake Cook in 39294. So I had to commute there all the time. It was a pain. I lived in Elgin at the time, so it was a long commute, and then trying to go through like Buffalo Grove area at rush hour was horrible.
Well, I live in Lake Zurich, and I travel to Deerfield, and I haven't been there since February of 2020. So
the commute's not bad then, huh?
No, not as long as you shift your schedule by an hour. So I usually get in early and leave early.
So our guest speaker is going to be Ginger Burrows, who works at Microsoft. I'll let her introduce herself in a second, but Ginger and I have worked together a little bit on doing some Power Automate workshops for a client of ours who was migrating from SharePoint Designer to Power Automate. So a lot of fun there. We did a lot of workshops for the same customer. So just in doing that, get to know her a little bit. And then I was talking to her or chatting with her, and she was saying how she was an Aspire hire. I was trying to pawn one of my customers off on her. Not really, but I needed some help, and she was the first person that came to mind. And then she was talking about how you were an Aspire hire at Microsoft. So that means basically hired right out of college, if I understand that right. So I thought that might be an interesting topic to hear a little bit about and how she got started in the Power Automate and basically that whole thing. So Ginger, do you want to talk about yourself a little bit? Or you want to save it for when you actually get to that part?
Sure, I could do like a quick intro. So my name is Ginger Burrows. Like Craig said, I'm now a customer engineer, but I was hired like right out of college. So I graduated May 2020 in the midst of COVID, and then started in September here at Microsoft. I'll talk more about my experience, but kind of given some time to ramp up, and then kind of just started out, delivering to people without that much experience. So hopefully that's an interesting topic to all of you, how I got to the point of being called a SME when I wasn't yet. Still probably am not, still learning, but it's definitely been an interesting year. So hopefully
So you've never actually been in a Microsoft building then yet?
No, I have not. Yeah, I'm based in Dallas. And I moved here, like, it was kind of an optional move at the point, in September. But I decided to move anyway, and I've actually never like even seen the office. I've never gone to it because it's closed, and yeah. So
Nice.
kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
the Las Colinas office is pretty nice. So.
Oh, is it? I've heard it's also under renovation, so it's supposed to be getting even like a little bit nicer. So hopefully I'll get a chance to go sometime, if it ever does open.
Yeah, when I got hired, I went to we did training through there. So I think yeah, I did some training through there, and I did some training out in Charlotte. That's our two base hubs. Ralph, does Rachel want to talk? Is she just Rachel, or are you just here for
Raquel, you mean Raquel?
Raquel, I'm sorry.
Raquel, hey,
Oh.
so Raquel is over here just doing tech.
Yeah, I'll be in the background, behind the shadows and everything. But yeah, I'm just making sure everything goes good. If there's any comments in the live stream, then I'll let you know. Yeah, so I'm just here to help you guys.
This is our first live stream, by the way, to YouTube while we're actually doing the conference, so I don't have to do the extra step of pasting the recording later on. It's instantly available.
That would be cool.
We're being efficient.
So, I don't know. Ralph, do you want to go to the next slide?
Sure. Let's go take a look at the next slide over here. We have our agenda. Go ahead.
Yes. So we're welcome. We've done intros. We normally do power platform updates, and then we'll have Ginger talk, and then closing questions, licensing, what Ralph delivers, and then a conclusion. So you want to go to the updates? There's 4 that I thought were interesting. Ralph, if you've got any more, then we can talk about that. There was actually one that I saw the other day. So next slide. Oh, no, go back one. I forgot. Microsoft M365 Chicago. You want to talk about that, Ralph? You were doing a lot of producing on that.
All right. So we just had that big event, the M365 Chicago site there. If you go to m365chicago.com, you'll see what we did. It's like a mini version of that virtual marathon that goes for 60 hours. So we did the Chicago version of it. We actually had a lot of great speakers, a lot of great content. And unlike last year, most of the videos are getting up onto the video site, which you can get over there when you get to the link pretty quickly. So actually more than 50% are already up there. In fact, I believe maybe even 60%. And everything that's available. I mean, literally, if you wanted to learn Power Platform end to end, I actually took an inventory of what we had, and you can actually have everything straight through for getting a lot of that information. Everything from ALM pieces to stuff related on Viva. That's just a Power Platform, but it's M365, so everything that you're interested in at that point is available to you there as well. So yes, we have a lot of recorded sessions, and we're hoping to have another one again before too long.
So about 50 of them, right, that we were able to capture?
Yep.
Yeah, so that included Teams, some Power BI, some Power Automate, some Power Platform, SharePoint, and I think that was about it. Might have been 1 or 2 on Azure. All right, now the updates. Next slide.
Stand by. There you go.
Let's see, important features on relationship validation for solutions. So this was something that was came out, which is pretty cool. So we just want to make sure that it actually does relationship validation for solutions, because sometimes you move things around, and you try to export solutions. And if they've got dependencies in the database to other things, the lookups don't always or weren't always working. So you had to make sure that that was all set up. But now if you do a solution import or export, you should get a message that tells you whether or not anything that has relationships in it should be working. So it basically ensures that your existing solution has everything in it that it needs to work once you publish it. And then there are 3 new Powerapps solutions that should be coming out. Those are actually pretty cool. That let you learn more about the people in your organization, so you can put those like right in Teams, and it's got some click-throughs and information on there. There's a link to it for that. So one is creating better connections to do a more inclusive workplace through Powerapps Solutions. So if you want to check those out, one taps into the knowledge base of your tier. So it basically searches teams and says it looks for people who are doing things that you might be interested in and surfaces that to you too. So that one's called Perspectives. There's Profile Plus was the first one that lets you kind of see better into your organization. And then there's a new one called Boards that lets you kind of organize content a little bit clearer. So again, that's Profile Plus, Perspectives, and Boards. And then we have, let me see, what is the other one? Variables in announcing variables in data source environment variables. So this is kind of cool, but the capability to provide enterprise grade application management for the data sources, and being able to use data source variables while you're doing that, so that the parameters can, so you can basically remember things that work all over. Ralph, have you looked into this at all? Do you know anything about the data source variables? Because I know this is something that you're normally interested in.
Yeah, so data source variables in the case of the Powerapps and Automate, that used to be a pain in the butt every time you had to move things around and you had to reconnect and basically by hand or maybe by an extra piece of script and everything else. Now that you actually have full support of those variables just out of the box, as you're able to start creating your solution packages, you just check a box and say, this is a variable that's going to go through. So right away, it will take care of all that plumbing. So when you move over to the new side, if you're doing it manually, it'll prompt you. And if you're not, it'll give you that place where it can look somewhere on on a variable that exists at the environment to go grab the value. Right. So that's actually very cool. The whole point is we want to get away from that. We still need to hand hold a solution from getting deployed, because until very recently, it was very, very difficult to get you end to end, wherein somebody creates something there, and then without anyone's human intervention, it makes its way all the way to the other side and just starts to work without anyone touching it. We're getting very, very close. It's not quite there yet. There's still some pieces that don't exactly work that way or need a little help, but we're very close. And this is one of them. This is a big one.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then one of the other ones that I saw that I think will make people happy, but is the available to print screens, print your Canvas app screens. So, instead of having to do the screenshot and all that kind of stuff, now you can print it straight from the app, which should be fairly useful.
It's one of those things, like no matter how much we want to automate and get away from killing trees and stuff, why are we still printing? We just gotta, we look at that tree, it's like, no, you're dead, buddy.
Yep. So so those are the big ones that I saw that came out in last month. Do you have anything that you might have saw in build or anything that you were interested in, Rob?
So very, very quickly, maybe not to put onto slides over here, some huge updates coming in on we talked about, remember I said that ALM story, that one with the data sources is only one part of it. Actually, it's part of an entire set. The idea, again, is like for the citizen developers, when they were doing just their own stuff and just copying things and just doing things at a very small scale, that was fine. But as we're beginning to find out, when we create some of these things, other people want them. People want scale out of them, so we need to be able to do it at a large version. So you might have heard of, like, for example, the COE, or the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. That starter kit just was basic, had some core reports and everything else. That thing keeps improving and improving and getting better now. And plus, it was actually hard to use. Just the installation for it was like a hair club joining event, really, to go through it all. And Greg should know what I'm talking about over here. Not that he's in the hair club or anything, but still, it was very complicated. So then they started saying, hey, and now you can do it, and you can go to because Dataverse now is free in Teams. Why not just use that instead of us having to pay an entire gigabyte worth of data just to make that work on the so-called what used to be CDS? And so they made that work, but again, they didn't simplify it. It was still a little bit hard, so it wasn't quite clear. That stuff is getting easier. And then of course the big hint that was dropped, like, well, some of that stuff perhaps maybe should have been in the admin screens in the first place. Big slap on the head. It's like, yeah, maybe, you think? And so watch out for that. Whatever you're doing, as they say in these areas, watch out. How do we say it? Watch that roadmap, or if you have control of your tenant, they have all those things that are upcoming. It's a good idea to actually watch those. I think, what we should do? We should, and maybe in our next session, do a quick update on the Karana showed like a very quick thing you can do in the admin screens, which is create a flow that sends messages to the admins or to anybody you want about what Microsoft announcements are coming through, and they can be filtered. So if you want to have all the Power Platform announcements go to you via Flow directly from the admin screens, you just download this one little app, install it to your tenant, and poof, you have it working. Very, very, very cool. That's just a teaser. We'll probably put it in the text somewhere. Right, but that one I think we're going to cover at a different time, mainly because I think there's going to be updates to that as things get better. So to me, let's just say the governance and ALM story is just becoming a night and day difference. Where what it used to be, where you had to hire like a very expensive people to put that stuff together, more of it is coming down to the masses, down to like the straight up user. That being said, with all that power, more responsibility. So you probably have to end up going to the folks like myself to come in. It's like, well, okay, hey, yeah, you loved driving that Ferrari, didn't you? That was really cool. Now that you can drive one for yourself, that was a little tough, wasn't it? Okay, no problem. Right, now that you feel it, now that you know what's going on and you feel comfortable with it, yes, leave the driving to us. We'll take care of it. But that's the concept over here. The idea is like, if you need it, you can get that help. Otherwise, if you don't, you have all the power in the world to get there. And that is the biggest thing that I've seen going through, essentially.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that so all that stuff I heard and I thought was good. I'm still trying to decide if that's going to make it into the admin center or if they're just going to leave that as a standalone application, because I kind of took it as they may leave that by itself in the COE and not bring it to the admin tool.
The COE will always exist because that's like a site, right? So that's always going to be there. But they're saying some of that power, like these reports, for example, and all those pieces, they should have been in the admin screen. Like if I wanted to know how many Dataverse environments were created in Teams, why should I go to the COE for that? An admin should be able to track that without having a separate screen for something that's straight. I mean, little things like that is what I'm saying will find their way into the admin screen.
Oh, okay.
Right, but not big functionality. Like for example, like you go to the COE, for example, if you have like code or like I should say templates and apps that you use all the time, you want to share and you want to reuse, the COE basically one-stop shop. Come over and get it and play. Right, but you wouldn't go to an admin screen for that. And no, that does not belong to the admins. That belongs to the peoples. I'm all for power for the peoples.
All right.
Probably why I'm in this group.
Yeah, I've just had a couple of conversations around governance and how people are struggling with that because they can't get all the information they want out of the admin screen. Right. So now they got to do the COE and then they have to set that up and then learn how to play with that. So been interesting. And then how does it scale has also been.
And how does it scale? And so here's the thing, though. You can even be a smaller organization and you could still make use of this and it can still help you and then give you benefits, right? It's not the kind of thing like, well, we're really small. It's just me, a 2-person operation. We're doing, I'm trying to get all this stuff to work. It's strangely enough, it's when you start taking the time out to actually put these things in place, you become a lean, mean, powerful, small organization. That's what I'm taking from that.
Yeah, I'm having problems on the bigger side. So the hundreds of thousands of employees, and then they're trying to get everybody who's using them working. And I was telling one of my customers who has, they're kind of smaller, but I'm like, what they're struggling with is when they have Dynamic 365 and they have the CRM,
Aha,
and they have that group who's doing their own thing with Dataverse and the own model-driven apps, right? And then on the other side, you've got the Office 365 people, so they want governance, but they don't want to. They want to play. They got to basically play in the same sandbox. We talked about this offline a couple times.
Oh yeah.
But they want to know how to separate those and control costs so that the Office people aren't paying for the Dynamics 365 people or vice versa. But
Exactly.
they both want to use the center of excellence. They both want to look at how things are doing. They need permissions to be able to set that up, and that's controlled by the DevOps groups or the cloud ops people who don't want to give permission yet, but they don't want to manage all of that. So trying to get all three of those parties working together has been fun for me for some of my clients, especially because it seems like the Office 365 SharePoint people have their ducks in a row as far as they know who manages what. The Dynamics 365 group tends to be all spread out, and we don't know who's managing which particular part. And then again, we got the Cloud Ops who wants to control all the security but doesn't want to own the process. So
that's really wild that the Dynamics people are the Wild West people, because that's the most expensive stuff to actually play with. So,
Yeah.
wow, well, you know what though? I remember the traders back in the days, like the ones that back in in my days would have been in the 80s, the crazy traders in the CME and those places over here. At 2 o'clock they were done. They go golfing and everything else, drive their fast cars out of there. They're wild and crazy, but they're the ones that make or lose millions in the matter of seconds and minutes, right? So they're crazy because, well, they're in a crazy business. So that sort of makes sense that they probably are in the crazy mode. But still, Dynamics is almost like accounting folks with long hair or something.
Yeah, so it's a little bit, so they're broken out a little bit more. So there's no like one central guy running that department.
Right.
But that is, I think it's enough side chat and conversation.
And indeed, let's move to the next slide.
Feature presentation of the day. So
slide to the next slide.
I hope Ginger did not fall asleep or decide to leave. And Ginger Burrows, being basically a Microsoft Aspire hire and getting started with the Power Platform, and how she was able to do it and the things that she kind of looks at. And I'm not really sure too much what you're going to go into. I will let you describe it and describe yourself, because you probably know yourself better than I do.
Sure. I have some slides if that's all right if I share, so you all don't fall asleep.
Can take control.
Let's see if my team cooperates. Okay, there we go. Can you all see that?
We can see that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit ago when I introduced myself, my name is Ginger Burrows. I joined Microsoft in September as an Aspire hire, meaning that I joined straight out of college. And I'll just talk now a little bit about my experience, kind of adjusting to the role, how I got started in Power Platform, and how I now deliver workshops on it to customers and kind of present myself as an expert, even though, I'm still at the beginning of my career and still have a lot to learn. But it'll be more of a story. It's not too technical of a presentation, but hopefully you all can find it interesting.
Sweet. The floor is yours, as they say.
And I'll go on mute so I won't bug you.
Awesome. Let's see. All right. So here's just a little bit about me. I put some pictures in to keep it interesting. So I'm from Potomac, Maryland originally. You can see some pictures of the beautiful scenery up at the top of the screen. I definitely do miss the nature that we had there compared to now living in Dallas, which is very flat and hot. But otherwise, Dallas is great, and I do enjoy living here. And so I went to Washington University in St. Louis for school. I majored in electrical engineering and minored in computer science. Along the way, I did some internships in software engineering, but decided I wanted to go into a role that was more social than I found software engineering to be, because, most of your day you're at your computer by yourself. I didn't really like that. So that's how I kind of got interested in other roles, roles that were like consulting, and then ultimately, obviously, I took the role as a customer engineer, which I don't think I totally understood what that entailed, but I knew it was customer facing. So I would have, more opportunities to interact with people in the day. I wouldn't just be like writing code on my computer all the time. And yeah, so I started at Microsoft in September 2020. So of course, in the midst of COVID, so started completely remote. But I still moved down to Dallas, Texas, which is like the office that I'm assigned to. So I don't have any photos of, me working at Microsoft because I work only remotely. But I have a picture of me and some of the other aspires who also moved down here. So luckily we were able to, meet up in person. We're now like good friends. And I also have a picture of me and my boyfriend during the historic snowstorm that we got a chance to experience. That was fun and also caused a lot of work stress for me. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, that was interesting. But otherwise, it's been a good year. As an aspiring, I will talk about that a little bit. Okay, so the Aspire program, like I said, it's the college hire program. I put a picture of the Acer Aspire up there just as a joke. I don't know if the Aspire program has a real logo, but if it does, I couldn't find it. So that's what I put instead. But yeah, so essentially what the program entails, well, first I should say it's kind of a company-wide program. There's people doing it on the product side, so like software engineers, program managers. I think there's some data sort of Aspire program too, and then we have the customer success and like MCS one for like customer engineers, consultants, people like account managers, people in that area, the customer-facing roles. And so those programs are run pretty separately. So we have, our own separate onboarding experiences. And during that process, there was like a 1 month sort of onboarding where we had kind of like really structured days of different activities where we would like learn a little bit about the role, get to know each other, nothing too serious or technical or anything like that. Just to give us a chance to kind of acclimate to Microsoft. And during that time, we had no idea really what technology we were going to be working on, like what ultimately we would even really be doing. But they tried to give us a better idea of where customer engineers kind of fit in within Microsoft and what people do day to day. But that varies a lot within the role, so it's kind of hard to know what things would look like after this period. But after that, we started our approximately 4 months of what they call ramp up. So something with the customer engineer role that is interesting is you're supposed to be a subject matter expert. So you're supposed to have like deep technical knowledge on Microsoft products so that you can be, of use to customers who are using them and have, complex questions and issues that they need solved. But the Aspires, really, none of us had that knowledge at all. They didn't hire us based on that skill set as they would like an industry hire. They really just hired us based on like personality and ability to like, converse and things like that. So so that, led to us needing that ramp up period.
So I have interviewed people for this program. We did look to see if you had a little bit more than personality, but did you have some technical ability and right? Could you learn and all that? So I'm guessing you had to do like a presentation for that, right? When you got hired, and
yes,
they did ask you questions about your technical. So I'm guessing that you're better or more technical. I mean, just based on what you studied than what you're trying to play and what you're representing. I know it sounds like you're being a little bit modest with yourself. Sorry.
Yeah, it was interesting. I would say most of the people that got hired into the program do have really good technical aptitude, like the ability to learn really quickly. But my interview, I felt it to be like the least technical interview I've ever had. Like the presentation was not on a technical topic. The technical questions I asked were was asked for like so simple, like, first class of like computer science questions. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. But I think it also varies depending who your interviewer is.
I'm almost curious of a sample question that you would say you could consider basic, because what some people consider basic may not be so basic.
Yeah, I think the question that they asked me that I thought was very basic was they asked me to write like a method for like factorials or something like that, which is like
Okay.
the sample question on like every like if you look up like coding interview prep, that's like the most basic one that you like always see. So that's why I thought it was kind of, they weren't trying to trick you. It was like very much just to see.
All right.
Like, do you know
For those out there, factorials is a math thing, and for some people that is not so basic. But for me, it is
Okay,
a
that's fair.
math person.
Yeah, that's fair.
That is at least of a level that shows that you have let's just say you need the math, right? The math helps you think logically, helps you follow a process and everything else. So factorials, well, there we go. We're going to add that one to the list. Make sure we review our factorials. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. But regardless, and some people that were hired did have really strong technical skills in certain areas, but definitely not on Microsoft products. I didn't really know many people who like were comfortable with any sort of Microsoft stack types of things at all, except for certain people that were hired from like the store. They knew a little bit more.
Yeah, they definitely have gone with more of a, are you a cultural fit, and can you learn, and do you have the aptitude to learn, than what it used to be. I think, as little as 4 or 5 years ago, where it was you would have gone through some pretty grueling technical interviews, and then you could pass those, but then when I want to put you in front of a customer type of thing is where I've seen that go, right? So sorry, don't interrupt.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, so that's it's kind of an interesting shift. But yeah, so that's what led us to really needing that 4 months of time, because otherwise, we would not have been ready to do anything with customers, because we weren't, familiar with the Microsoft products. And I actually did not ramp up on Power Platform. I didn't touch it at all during that 4 months of time, as I'll talk about in a second. But I wouldn't say that time was wasted. I did spend it learning skills, but learning Power Platform was definitely more of a scramble for me later on. But yeah, so essentially after those 4 months, we had about from like October to mid-January to ramp up, and then we had to start just kind of taking on the role ourselves, like delivering to customers, whether that be like workshops or working with them in a more custom way, and just questions they had, things like that. But that was kind of what we were supposed to do. And like all customer engineers, we do have a utilization target. It's a lot lower than people that are a little more tenured, going into the second year in the role. Well, I guess now utilization is kind of gone. But, in the past, it used to be your Aspire year, you have a lower target, and then you go into just like being a normal employee and have the same target as everyone else. But
yeah, they say it's not gone, but I'm guessing you still have to hit your market or they will not be happy.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit confusing now, like what exactly the expectations are, but probably it's about the same. But yeah, so for us, it was much lower, but it still was kind of a daunting number considering we hadn't delivered to customers at all. So but that's kind of like the overarching goal for the year, like get ready and then deliver like this many hours to customers, and then you'll hit your targets and everyone will be happy with you. So in doing that, I was assigned to a technology. And well, first I was assigned to a domain, which was apps and infrastructure, which I would say is the most technically deep sort of domain that you could be in. Although, there are definitely really technical pieces of all the domains. This is the one, people are like deeply passionate and knowledgeable about, like the cloud and all the development topics that lie under there. So pretty challenging stuff. And then within apps and infrastructure, I was assigned specifically to apps, which is like Azure apps, app development type of stuff. So it's things like developing platform as a service applications on Azure, containerization, Kubernetes, .NET, some people do, and then also Azure DevOps, which is kind of where I was told to focus. And the reason for that was because in the past there was a real push towards getting customers onto the Azure DevOps platform. And there had been tons of like workshop requests for it. And it was a real like point of interest for people. That was really longer the case, as I'll talk about in a second. But based on like past, performance metrics, sales metrics, and things like that, they told everyone who they assigned to the apps part of apps and infrastructure to do Azure DevOps, like get accreditations in that area, get prepared to deliver, and things like that. So that's pretty much what I did. I got the workshop accreditations, which essentially just means you're like certified that you're good to deliver that workshop. I didn't find that to be the most, helpful way to learn material. Like I felt like, I was prepared for the workshops, but I wasn't prepared for anything beyond that. And, with DevOps specifically, it's very challenging because every customer has like very different stack. Some people might be using .NET and Azure DevOps, whereas other customers might be using like Java and Jenkins, and they want you to wrap it in Azure DevOps. It's like varies a lot. So you don't really know what you're going to get when you start working with customers. So basically, I felt very unprepared after my ramp up. I'd done shadowing, where I'd watched people deliver workshops. I'd delivered small pieces of them myself, but I just didn't feel super ready to take on those complex cases that you can get thrown at you when you're doing something like this. And then, when I got into the time when I was supposed to actually take on work myself, I found there just wasn't, requests anymore for Azure DevOps. Probably because, somewhat because of, the GitHub mission. Customers were getting more interested in that, using GitHub and the GitHub Actions as opposed to working on Azure DevOps. I heard the metric that it only has like 90,000 users, so it's not really that widely used. So it just became very difficult to find like work in that area. And we're SEs, we're really not given work for the most part. You kind of just have to go out and sort of search for it yourself, and then kind of build a rapport with account managers so they'll give you some work over time as they get to you. So going into an area like the development space is very difficult because the only requests that were available were like these really random things with like third-party tools integrating with another tool, integrating with some other Microsoft tool, and it's just this pretty out there stuff that I just didn't really have a background in, because I didn't have that strong development experience that a lot of people build in industry before coming into the role. I came just straight from college. So that's where I decided, I didn't really like my design technology. It just wasn't really working for me. The material was too niche and challenging, and I want to do something a little bit more enjoyable for me. So that's how I kind of got into Power Platform. I started out doing it at first just because I took, actually my first request was for a customer that wanted help just understanding how to use like application lifecycle management in Power Platform. They wanted to use Azure DevOps to build like a pipeline, like a build and deployment pipeline. So that was pretty easy for me to do because, I was pretty familiar with Azure DevOps, but I had to read up a lot on how, like solutions are managed in the Power Platform and how all of that works. And in doing that, I kind of got a little bit more introduced to it. Kind of started seeing that, it was a good opportunity because it was a lot more user-friendly than what I'd been doing before. And it's, of course, built to be that way. It's built to be accessible to end users. So that also made it really appealing to me because I kind of considered myself, so new. I wanted something that I could learn fast and easily become what I consider to be, more of an expert, more than I thought I could be on the really complex development tools I was working on before. So that's where I decided to just start learning it as fast as possible because I was already eating into my time where I was supposed to be building up Util. And I didn't have much yet. A lot of the people that started with me were just delivering on the technologies they had trained on. So they were already building up like a good amount of utilization, and I just felt kind of behind. So that's why I tried to learn super, super fast. I think that led me to, I learned Power Automate in about a week, and then I started delivering on it the next week, which sounds actually super crazy. But here I have, some things that kind of helped me on that. I think the first thing I could talk about, Power Platform is built for end users. So if you have a little bit more of a development background, I think it's easy to kind of grasp the concepts behind it. And then you just have to learn all the sort of things that people wouldn't necessarily know, a little bit about the licensing, a little bit about the admin stuff, a little bit about what it can and can't do, like its limitations. And I started doing that with Power Automate first, not Powerapps. And I chose that on purpose because I just felt that there was less you could do with Power Automate. When you're building an application, there's a lot you can do as far as like customize it, do all these different things. But with Power Automate, it's pretty limited. You can do what you can do with the connectors, and you can, of course, manipulate data and things like that. But there's probably kind of a finite set of things that you can do, especially if you don't have a premium license. You're pretty limited. So that's why Power Automate was appealing for me to start on as opposed to Powerapps. And I actually shadowed Craig like pretty early on. I think I'd only been doing Power Automate for like a week at that point. And then I started delivering on these like SharePoint to Power Automate transformation workshops, and I barely knew what SharePoint was. But I was able to do this just by learning the basics, right? I didn't have to know how SharePoint works in the backend. I didn't need to know all the details. I just needed to know what information you could get from SharePoint into Power Automate, and then what you could do with it from there. And of course, this isn't maybe the ideal way to deliver to customers, but I didn't have a choice because time was burning. I needed to get some hours under my belt. But it actually worked out. I learned a lot on the job just from customers asking me questions, and from building things on the spot. Because in that workshop, you do have like a portion where you have to build things for the customers right there in front of them. But I actually became a lot more comfortable through that, not just with the material itself, but also with just working with customers in general. And it turned out to not be too much of a problem. My reviews were pretty good. So I kind of felt that this was a good direction for me to go in. And from there, after getting pretty comfortable with Power Automate, I started getting more into Powerapps, just building some on my own to kind of like learn about all the different things you can do with it. And then, of course, delivering some too. So some of the other things that I think helped me in this was also just the abundance of documentation. There's a kind of a wealth of resources out there for Power Platform, which isn't the case for every tool that you might use, especially when I was working on DevOps. There's just not that many resources out there. There's not the same community that there is with Power Platform. But things like the Power Users community, that really helps, especially when you're a beginner. It's really nice to be able to go on there and like see questions that other people have asked, and see examples of things that you might run into. And especially when customers ask you questions, usually it's the same question another customer's asked out on the Power User community. So you can find that as a reference. So I think that was something that was really helpful and allowed me to get ramped up much faster, because I could see sort of those sticking points out in the Power User community and see maybe features that don't exist yet, and a definite answer like whether it was there or not. Another thing I think was pretty helpful was just being used to cramming, coming right from college, cramming for exams and things like that. I was kind of used to it, so it didn't seem as crazy to cram for a workshop and get ready to deliver in just a matter of a few days. Although I wouldn't recommend that, but sometimes you're put in the position where there's no choice, so you just kind of do it. Now having a little more experience, of course, I would never put myself in that situation again because it wasn't fun. But it did help me to learn very fast and get to a point of maybe not being an expert, but being comfortable with all the tools within a matter of maybe like a few weeks. And so, from there, I just really kind of enjoyed it too. I found that customers really enjoy learning about the Power Platform. They get really excited seeing that they can build things for the first time, especially because I do work a lot with people that are kind of reskilling on the Power Platform. So they maybe don't have any background in development. So they really like seeing that their ideas can come to life. And for that reason, as well as the fact that I just found that my skills were better suited to Power Platform. I didn't really like the kind of niche challenges that development offers. I really like working on a platform. I like not having to worry about things like infrastructure and just having that all built for you, and all you have to worry about is the development. I've kind of continued focusing my efforts there. And mostly what I do is deliver workshops at this point. I don't really have any customers that are dedicated to me, so I just kind of take whatever requests come along and just deliver those workshops as needed. I do like doing that. I like the workshops, but I also wish I could get to know customers a little bit better, because I give a workshop and then I sometimes see them again if they have questions, but usually it's just workshop and then that's it. I'm on to the next customer. So I think it would be nice to get to know people a bit better, maybe get to know their environments, some of the custom things they're working on. So that's what I'm really looking forward to doing next year. So a little bit about, I guess, the future, what I'm planning to do. So I actually just switched domains. So I was supposed to go to a team within apps and infrastructure, like a manager who manages a team of like app dev CEs, but because I didn't really want to do that, I didn't want to work on containerization or PaaS or anything like that. I decided to switch to the BizApps domain, which is kind of like our manages Dynamics, but it's getting more into the Power Platform and like just like general, like the newer part of Power Platform, like Canvas apps, Power Automate, and stuff like that. So I'm switching over there, and I think that should be interesting. I don't totally know what it's going to entail, but I know that I will be working in more of a pod model, so I won't be delivering Myth anymore, just doing the structured workshops. I'll be doing a little more custom work with customers and getting to know them a little bit better. So I'm looking forward to that. That's pretty much wraps up my story. I guess some of my takeaways from this were just, I don't know, sometimes it's okay just to pivot, just to give up on something when it's not really working. I still do work on DevOps in respect to Power Platform, but I try not to work on it just in general anymore, just because I found I don't enjoy it. And I like the Power Platform better. Another thing I learned was, like, it's okay not to be an expert, but sometimes just learning fast is just the best skill to have. So that's definitely something I think I've built up a little bit this year, and hopefully I can continue to do that in the future. Also, just seeing an opportunity. I think I saw that the demand was really high in Power Platform, so I kind of jumped ship and went over there, and I think it's kind of paid off. So I'm glad I took that opportunity when I saw it. But that's pretty much all I have. But thank you all for letting me present. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, but no problem if not. This isn't the most technical type of presentation.
So the nice thing about the Power Platform is really it's not that old. So I don't feel that joining now is a good time for you, even though it's still young in your career. Because there isn't that much history, right? You're kind of learning with a lot of the rest of the world as far as doing that. But I am curious on what you found some of the best resources. You've been doing a lot of cramming and studying. What have you been looking at to get up to date?
Yeah, so I talked about the Power user community. I like that a lot. I also like the blogs. I don't have like one specific one that I use, but just I forgot what they're called, like the Microsoft certified experts, or like one of the people that they're not Microsoft employees, but they're like certified. They have a lot of blogs out there. Also just trying to build I don't try to build full apps or full flows that often, but I try to build the little pieces that I need to know to understand like a new feature. I feel that that's useful because it saves you time. Because I don't have the time to build out a full app that like looks good and does everything, but I can build out a small part and then I can help customers implement it. So that's kind of the approach I took. A little bit more like getting, but when I was really just like cramming one night and then delivering the next, that's kind of what I was doing.
Yeah, you and me both. So yeah, I always have to refresh for every time I deliver the workshops to make sure that I understand what's going on, and all that kind of stuff. So I think one of the hard parts from our perspective is if we're teaching it so much, but we're not always delivering it real world. So you haven't really, it's hard to get that full development experience that sometimes that we get asked on questions. And that's when I lean on people like Ralph, who is in the real world doing the implementations and stuff.
Yeah.
I actually watch a Reza and an April video straight through usually. Well, so do you have any favorites? Any stars that like that you remember their names because simply you've heard them so many times, or you've seen them in the posts more times than not?
Not really. Yeah, I don't watch any videos actually.
Oh, really?
Very rarely do I do that. And the blogs, not really. I always find myself on a different blog. I think it's because I also jump around a lot. Like sometimes I'm doing DevOps stuff, sometimes I'm doing Power Automate, sometimes I'm doing like more dynamics things. So different people kind of make blogs on different stuff. So I think.
So did they point you to the groups in Microsoft that are like very, very focused in that, like the PAC group? The PAC group working for like the ALM. That particular group. What I'm talking about?
Yeah, I've heard about that, but I don't have much access. I kind of.
Craig's been telling me that it's like me on the outside seem to have more access to people than you guys appear to have.
Yeah.
It's weird. Isn't that weird?
I feel like we're a little bit solo, but we do have the Power Platform Ninjas community, as Craig probably knows. That's probably the strongest community in Microsoft I've found to answer your questions.
Yeah, so it's really about like having to build your network and know the right people, and it's not as easy as you think it would be just coming in like, oh yeah, I should be able to just ping somebody, and I can a little bit because I know them before they moved into Microsoft.
And because you did the user group stuff, that's why you actually know some people.
Like I have pinged April or Heather or a couple of the other people who I know, Brian Dang, occasionally, but I don't want to do that too often because I don't want to wear out my welcome. Mm-hmm. And two, if I didn't know them from the community, I don't know that I would have felt comfortable doing that. So there are some internal groups, but it's really, from our position, it's really hard to get into the product group and get information. I don't know why, but and I know I was chasing messages with April before she moved into the product group, and she's like, I feel like I gave up a lot of my access moving from being an MVP to being in the Microsoft community to being a Microsoft employee. So
wow.
A couple other people have told me that. So we're trying to do stuff internally between people who used to be external and have experience and have that network to kind of redo that. But
and there's a lot of you now, not just April, like Hugo Bernier and all these other folks. They're Sebastian Lever, I think, like a whole bunch of people that used to be the MVPs all over the place. Waldeck. I mean, I have a list of names that I know for fact, and all of a sudden they didn't go quiet necessarily. They're still active, which is great. I'm glad that Microsoft is allowing them to still have their voice, like especially like April, Donna, and stuff that are still able to talk and everything else. In fact, maybe it just seems though that community tie is more important for you now more than ever. The more you go into Microsoft, if you have that tie back to the community, you got to maintain it, because if you give that up, you pretty much, that's it. It's like going blind.
Yeah, so it does take a while to reestablish your network and figure out who's doing what and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I will say. So,
all right.
And then somebody like Ginger who's coming in, and she doesn't have the network ties or anything like that, and doesn't even.
Right.
It's hard when you don't even know how to reach out, because it's very. like she had said, it's very, you're running your own kind of business in here and you're finding your own work. And that was kind of,
I mean, that was weird. When I heard that, that was
we're
really weird
supposed
to
help
hear.
you,
Yeah.
but it is very entrepreneurial in nature when you first start.
Wow.
But
Entrepreneurial within Microsoft. How about that?
yeah. So
Yeah, that's one of the things I found the most different about. Well, I guess I worked at a couple different places as an intern, but you don't have a team here, really. Like, you're just you.
At
You have
least
your
at the
manager.
moment.
Yeah.
you're assigned a team, but really, and well, you have the Aspire hire, but when I started there, we had a group of people that I met, so I still talked to a few of them. But when we came through the hiring program, um, that have helped. And one of the things that has helped me is there's a guy who lives like 2 miles from my house, and we got hired together. So we go back and forth and chat about it. And we were meeting for lunch kind of pre-COVID about once a month. So
Wow.
that has helped. But
I think that personal interaction is also, that's the other one though that I noticed, especially for folks, unfortunately, when they join Microsoft, especially when they used to attend the conferences. All right, that's the one thing that you quickly, unless you are a product manager or someone super high up, you're not going to be going to those anymore, unless you totally do it on your own, somehow, which is like, it's sad. To me, the community should be maintained. And also, actually, this is why we have someone like you coming to talk to us, to share your experience, to show that perspective, to show that even within Microsoft, where they actually invented the thing, how do we know they didn't invent the thing? The guys who invented the thing, or the guys and gals that invented the thing, have their own issues. They have their own scaling issues, their own training issues. They deal with it as they deal with it, in much the same way as everyone else is trying to manage and find their way or flounder, whichever, their way through it. And that's the experience that where we want to share today. To say that, guess what? Even if you're from Microsoft, you're not alone. You're not alone. Whatever you're doing out there, you are not alone. And don't get stuck, right? And here's Ginger. It didn't sound like you get stuck at any point. Nothing got you stuck, right? Where you couldn't solve. Did you ever have something like there was just no way to solve it? And when I tried to ask, no one could help me, and we had to tell them, you never really had to raise your hand and surrender, or did you?
No, I wouldn't say I did. Yeah, usually I could always find, if not on the internet, the answer from a person
Worst case.
around. Yeah.
The problem is, and you know this very well, Ralph, that you can't always find the answer that they want.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That part is different. That's a different problem, right? It's like the answer I'm looking for is I don't have to pay nothing. Well, I tell you what, the answer I'll give you is here's a gateway drug. Here, have your sample. See you later, and come pay me.
Or I want my cake and to be able to eat it too. And the best that you could say is, well, you can have the cake, right? But
that's right.
You can have a pie. Here's a pie. This is what the service does.
Exactly. Here's a pie. Here, you can look at this. Here's a picture of the pie. Beautiful pictures.
So sometimes the tool isn't where other people want to use it. And I think that kind of talks about where we were talking about the admin center isn't as robust as something that I would expect it to be, or would like it to be, right? Or definitely not my customers. And that's where the COE comes in and having to make those kind of recommendations. So it is almost 6:30. Ginger, thank you for being on. Thank you for talking to us and going through your story. It's, I think it's very, very eye-opening. I like it, not like it, but it was very well told. Gives us a little bit of insight into what somebody can be doing, coming in and getting started with, and they can just a good, kind of story that you can pick up the Power Automate and run with it. You don't have to be a dev or somebody that's been there for years, right? The materials are out there. There are a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
And thanks for being brave to give us your story.
Yeah. Well, in conclusion, our next meeting is going to be on August 18th. I still got to find a speaker for that. It is always the third Wednesday of the month. We're going to skip July just because it's the summer. And if you go to our meetup group, CMP PUG at Meetup. We are up to 432 members. So if anybody wants to join that or forward that on to anybody, or join our LinkedIn group, which is groups 12181438.
What the heck? Don't we have a friendly name in LinkedIn yet? We need to
I
tell
don't.
somebody about that. Wait a minute. Microsoft owns LinkedIn. Hello.
I haven't done anything with the LinkedIn. I haven't been too active. Other people have been active on it, but I haven't not used it as much as I should.
All right.
I'll leave that for you.
We'll leave that for me. No problem.
Great. So then our next slide is any questions that anybody else might have. Feel free to ask.
It's your chance. If you have license questions, oddly enough, I'm the license guy for some reason, and it's beginning to stick at some point. And everyone, though, here's the thing now. You know what's so weird, Craig? Now everyone has a little bit of license talk in their stuff. More people are getting brave to talk about it. And I'm wondering why.
I was talking about it today. I understand it. It's just really hard to get other people to understand it.
Yes, it is. But the
it's
point
not that
is, though,
complicated.
Yeah, it is not that complicated. But the thing is, though, it's how do we say it? If I summarize licensing in Power Platform, it's called gateway, drug, and pay. Right? You have all your ways of doing things without having to pay. And the reason for it is like we're giving you a package that this is your package, work within the package, and you can do all this fun stuff, everything you can imagine, and just nudge it, shave off that square peg, make it a round hole, make it fit the round hole, and it will work. However, when you want to go outside, whatever you want to do to go outside, you got to pay. And say, well, I prefer that product because I can do whatever I want. Yeah, but how much does that product cost you? Then all of a sudden they stop and say, oh, it's cheap. Yes, is it? Is it? Guess what? In the end of the day, licensing, Microsoft was actually smart. They really thought it through. You get your package for essentially free, which is you have your Office 365 license. You do all this stuff. If you go outside, you got to pay maybe a little bit. They'll nickel and dime you, but it's a little bit. And if you stay within the bounds, you're okay. If you go scale out, it comes to a point where like they make it painful for you to have to keep using the let's just say the Butler service to scale out. They'll say, look, you're beyond Butler service. You now have to get your own custom service. So we're going to make it expensive because here's the actual solution for you to do. And that's the basics for licensing right there. And what are the nuances? The nuances, capacity, and all the little pieces like that is usually the case. So I've been finding out that people have been braver to talk about it. More importantly, a lot of the presenters that when they talk about their solutions are at least nice enough to say, oh, by the way, this is a premium license, what I'm showing you. Oh, by the way, you can do this without a premium license. They're actually taking the time out to say these things instead of later on they give us something and we're trying it out ourselves. I'm like, what? I got to pay? Well, you didn't tell me that when you showed me your demo. Oh, of course, you guys in Microsoft, do you guys pay? You have to, when you're playing with the stuff, do you actually have full licenses to play? That's a curious thing. Do they make you pay like everybody else?
I get the developer tenants and I sign up for trial licenses. I don't know if Ginger's found a way to do a.
So
you have to play for free, Ginger. That's the question.
Yeah, so we do have like the full licenses in our like own accounts, but you're like sometimes limited with like not having admin permissions on certain things that you might want. But I don't know if you know the Modern Work demo tenants, Craig.
Oh, yeah.
I make those, so it's kind of the same thing. It just gives you like your own tenant environment for free,
Oh, so
and you get
like
it for like. Oh, go for it.
I'm sorry, that's your version of like the dev tenant that the regular folks would get, or is that something different?
The CDX tenant.
Yeah, but you get it for a little bit longer. I think you get like 90 days or something, and you can extend it.
You can get one for a year. You can get one tenant for a year. So
that's what I'm looking for in my case to like mass train in my level. I have to mass train, but that's the solution I'm looking for. But by the way, folks, if you have to play, remember you can get your own free dev tenant. And oh, you know what news that I forgot to mention earlier? We remember that tech community, the free Dataverse that you could get, the free Power Platform environment.
Yeah, the community.
It's now a developer environment. And if you don't touch it, it automatically becomes a developer environment. A developer environment means that it's not just for yourself. You can actually share it with other people. And the whole point is they want you to take that gateway drug and start infecting others, I guess, and bringing more people into your game. Because here's the problem: that community tenant, when you were creating apps for yourself, you created your app and you had to migrate it immediately to really test it out or try it out for any sense and form. When you had the ability, like a developer, like the dev tenant in the first place, to have more people participate, guess what? Now you can create test users and do these other things that actually have a true development environment. And it's, guess what? Free. All right. So if you haven't looked at your community tenant, your play environment yet, or if you haven't even tried it, please go get one. It's going to be a dev tenant. It's very, very powerful. And this essentially means that if you were trying to learn and that was stopping you because you couldn't do stuff, there's now no excuse not to learn.
Cool.
Done.
And with that, let's wrap it up, Ralph, because we've got things to do.
We wrap it up. Raquel, you can go ahead and play that intro video out. Is probably what we'll do to play out the live stream. If you're out there, Raquel. Oh.
All right. Again, Ginger, thanks for being on. Jim, Naresh left. Jim, thanks for being with us. We're just hoping
thanks
for
our small audience over here. Guess what? You're part of that live stream that's shown out there. So everyone's gonna be like, "What? I missed that meeting," and they're gonna be coming for your autographs. Look out!
Yeah. So.